The 13 shocking facts they kept hidden about the 1961 Pontiac Tempest, GM's strange half V8 engine introduction. Picture this, October 1960. American automakers are scrambling to compete with cheap imports flooding the market. Ford plays it safe with the Falcon. Chrysler introduces the sensible Valiant. Then Pontiac walks in with something nobody expected, the Tempest. This wasn't just another compact car. It was a mechanical experiment that took a V8, cut it in half, bolted the transmission to the back wheels, and connected everything with what critics called a rope drive. The man behind this oddity? A 36-year-old engineer named John Z. DeLorean. Yes, that DeLorean, the same Maverick who would later create the GTO and the infamous stainless steel DMC-12 from Back to the Future. But in 1961, he was just a young hotshot with a tiny budget and a massive problem to solve. The 1961 Pontiac Tempest won Motor Trend's Car of the Year award, pioneered engineering concepts decades ahead of its time, and spawned a legacy that led to the muscle car era. Yet most people have never heard of it. Today, we're uncovering 13 shocking facts about this forgotten innovator, the real engineering choices, desperate compromises, and flat-out weird decisions that made the Tempest one of the strangest cars Detroit ever built. Let's roll. Fact 1. The half V8 engine was literally half a V8. The Pontiac Trophy 4 engine wasn't a marketing gimmick. It was exactly what it sounded like. Engineers took Pontiac's legendary 389 cubic inch V8, drew a line down the middle, and cut away the left bank of cylinders. What remained was a massive 194.5 cubic inch inline four-cylinder engine, precisely half the displacement of the 389. This wasn't just cost-cutting brilliance. It was born from desperation. Pontiac had virtually no money to develop a new compact car engine, but they had plenty of V8 tooling sitting idle. By using one cylinder bank from the 389, they could build both engines on the same assembly line using over 120 shared components. According to Pontiac General Manager Bunky Knudsen, the startup cost was practically nil. The Trophy 4 shared the V8's bore and stroke, 4.06 inches by 3.75 inches, making it one of the largest four-cylinder engines ever installed in an American production car. With a 4-barrel carburetor and high compression, it produced up to 155 horsepower. That doesn't sound like much today, but in 1961, that was respectable power from just 4 cylinders. The cylinders were tilted at a 45-degree angle to the right, earning it the nickname Slant 4. This wasn't just for looks. It allowed the engine to fit under the hood while using a standard Pontiac V8 cylinder head, complete with all its valve train components. Pontiac could literally bolt a V8 head onto a 4-cylinder block. But here's where things got interesting and loud. Without the other 4 cylinders to balance it out, this massive 4-banger shook like it was trying to tear itself apart. And often, it did exactly that. Fact 2. The engine vibrated so badly, it shook itself to pieces. There's a basic rule in engine design. Inline 4-cylinder engines, larger than about 2.5 liters, need balance shafts to run smoothly. The Trophy 4 displaced 3.2 liters. It had no balance shaft. John DeLorean himself later admitted, "The car rattled so loudly that it sounded like it was carrying half a trunk full of rolling rocks." Owners nicknamed it the hay baler because it sounded like farm equipment. The vibration wasn't just noise. The timing chain from the V8 wasn't designed for the violent shaking. Early Tempests suffered from chains that stretched and broke, causing catastrophic engine failure. Around 30% of manual transmission owners complained about clutch problems. The vibrations were literally shaking the drivetrain apart. To manage this, Pontiac mounted the engine on soft rubber mounts at the front, while the rear was supported solely by the drive shaft. DeLorean famously said the Tempest was a car designed around an engine mounting system. Despite the noise, the Trophy 4 was remarkably reliable once you got past the vibration. It could deliver 18 to 22 miles per gallon, impressive for 1961. The problem was that nobody wanted to drive something that felt like it was falling apart. Fact 3. The experimental origins started with a disabled V8. Before the Tempest project began, Pontiac engineers took a standard 389 V8 and simply deactivated 4 of its cylinders to see what would happen. The result shocked them. With only half its cylinders firing, the V8 could still push a full-size Catalina to better than 90 mph while delivering reasonable fuel economy. This sparked a radical idea. What if they actually built a 4-cylinder using V8 components? With a new cylinder block and crankshaft, but sharing the head, pistons, rods, and virtually every other component with the 389, they could create a 4-cylinder that was essentially free to produce. The gamble worked from a manufacturing standpoint. The Trophy 4 could be built on the same transfer lines as the V8, dramatically reducing production costs. From a bean counter's perspective, it was brilliant. From an engineer's perspective, it was trading refinement for cost savings. Fact 4. The rope drive wasn't actually a rope. The Tempest's most famous feature has been misunderstood since day one. People called it a rope drive, imagining some flexible cable. That's not what it was. The drive shaft was actually a solid forged steel torsion bar with a diameter of 0.75 inches for manuals and 0.65 inches for automatics. This steel bar was curved in a downward arc of about 3 inches and ran through a curved steel tube supported by roller bearings. The curve was permanent. The shaft didn't flex like a rope. Instead, as it spun, it remained in its fixed arc, transmitting torque through its rigidity. This design had been tested on full-size GM cars years before the Tempest came along. The curved drive shaft served multiple purposes. Its arc eliminated the transmission tunnel, allowing a flat floor. The curve also helped dampen some of the Trophy 4's vibrations. The steel had high nickel, chrome, and molybdenum content, making it stronger and more expensive than a conventional drive shaft. Despite the nickname and skepticism, service reports showed the curved drive shaft was reliable and effective. The real problems were everywhere else. Fact 5. The transmission was mounted in the trunk. The Tempest mounted its transmission at the rear of the car, bolted directly to the differential. This transaxle setup meant the engine was in front and the transmission was in back, connected by that curved drive shaft. This achieved nearly perfect 50-50 weight distribution, something sports car manufacturers spend fortunes trying to achieve. It also eliminated the transmission hump, giving the Tempest exceptional interior space. Road and Track praised it as one of the very best utility cars since the Ford Model A. The transaxle was adapted from the Chevrolet Corvair. The automatic version was a 2-speed unit controlled by a small dashboard lever. For 1962, Pontiac added a 4-speed manual option with a floor shifter, exotic stuff for an American compact. But mounting the transmission in the rear created a heat problem. During racing, some teams cut holes in the trunk floor and dumped ice bags onto the transaxle to keep it from overheating. That's not ideal for a street car. Fact 6. It had 4-wheel independent suspension in 1961. While most American cars still used solid rear axles, the Tempest featured 4-wheel independent suspension, exotic technology in 1961. The rear suspension was borrowed from the Corvair, a swing axle design with each wheel carried on a semi-trailing arm with a coil spring. Combined with the rear transaxle and 50-50 weight distribution, the Tempest should have handled like a European sedan. In practice, it could be terrifying. The swing axle design had a nasty characteristic. Under hard cornering, the rear wheels would tuck under, suddenly losing traction. This created snap oversteer. The rear end would break loose with little warning. Contemporary testers warned about the abrupt loss of rear-wheel traction at the limit. One owner remembered spinning his Tempest 360 degrees in the rain after a quick right turn. The problem was worsened by positive camber in the suspension. The wheels tilted outward at the top when empty, reducing the contact patch in corners and making snap oversteer even more sudden. For 1963, Pontiac revised the geometry, but the fundamental swing axle design remained. Fact 7. DeLorean designed it with a near-zero budget. The Tempest's strange engineering wasn't visionary planning, it was born from desperation. GM gave Pontiac a mandate: build a compact car to compete with imports. The budget? Practically nothing. GM gave other divisions all new aluminum V8 engines and conventional drivetrains. Pontiac got told to figure it out themselves. This is where John Z. DeLorean came in. He had to build an all-new compact using existing components and minimal tooling. The Trophy 4? Half a V8, built on existing production lines. The transaxle? Borrowed from Corvair. The rear suspension? Also Corvair. The curved driveshaft? Repurposed from an earlier project. Even most body panels came from the Oldsmobile F85. According to General Manager Bunky Knudsen, the Trophy 4's startup cost was practically nil. The entire Tempest was assembled like a mechanical parts bin special. Despite the shoestring budget, the Tempest introduced Americans to front-engine, rear transaxle layouts, four-wheel independent suspension, and unibody construction, features that wouldn't become common for decades. Fact 8. Only 1% got the optional aluminum V8. While most Tempests had the rough Trophy 4, Pontiac offered an optional engine decades ahead of its time. Buick's 215 cubic inch all-aluminum V8. This engine weighed just 330 pounds, less than the Trophy 4, yet produced between 155 and 215 horsepower. It featured aluminum block and heads, making it one of the first mass-produced aluminum V8s in history. The 215 would later be sold to Rover for decades of use. Only about 3,662 Tempests got the 215 V8, roughly 1% of production. Of those, only 3 were paired with the manual transmission. Each V8 block was hand-stamped at the Pontiac plant with the vehicle's VIN. At $260 extra for the V8 versus just $39 for the top Trophy 4, most buyers chose the economy option and lived with the vibrations. Fact 9. Motor Trend named it Car of the Year. Despite everything. When the Tempest was introduced on October 6, 1960, journalists weren't sure what to make of it. Here was a compact that vibrated like a jackhammer and handled like a nervous cat. Yet Motor Trend magazine awarded the 1961 Pontiac Tempest its prestigious Car of the Year honor. Editor Don Werner explained, "The basic premise of the Motor Trend Award is that the progress in design recognized must be a distinct advance toward a better car. The Tempest fills this requirement fully." Road testers praised the innovation, spacious interior, and nimble size. They criticized the power steering and warned about sudden rear traction loss, but the consensus was that positives outweighed negatives. Pontiac built 100,783 Tempests in the first year. Respectable, though nowhere near Falcon or Corvair numbers. Motor Trend essentially bet that the Tempest's front-engine, rear transaxle layout represented the future. As history proved, they were both right and wrong. Fact 10. The price was shockingly low. At $2,167, in 1961, the base Tempest cost just $2,167, roughly $2,300 in today's money, making it one of the most affordable new cars in America. This pricing was critical. It had to undercut the Buick Special and Oldsmobile F-85, both using the expensive aluminum V8 as standard. The Trophy 4 allowed Pontiac to hit that lower price while still offering a substantial-feeling car. But $12,167 was just the starting point. Air conditioning, power steering, bucket seats, the 4-speed manual, and especially that aluminum V8 could push the price toward $3,000. The genius was in standard equipment. The Tempest came with turn signals, electric wipers, sun visors, and 5 tubeless tires, features sometimes optional on cheaper cars. The top Trophy 4 with 4-barrel carburetor added just $39 for 155 horsepower, an absolute bargain. That low entry price made the Tempest attainable for younger buyers, the same demographic that would embrace the GTO just 3 years later. Fact 11. It was really GM's first unibody car. Hidden beneath the strange engineering was another historic first. The Pontiac Tempest rode on GM's first production unibody chassis. Until 1961, virtually every GM car used body-on-frame construction. The Y platform integrated the body and frame into a single welded structure. This was common in Europe, but revolutionary for GM. Unibody construction was lighter, improving fuel economy and handling. It was more rigid, reducing squeaks. And it could be more cost-effective to manufacture. For the Tempest, unibody construction was essential. Weight savings helped offset the Trophy 4's low power. The rigidity helped control vibrations, and manufacturing efficiency kept costs down. The Y-body's unibody design proved influential. When GM developed the A-body platform for 1964, including the second-generation Tempest and the GTO, they stuck with unibody. By the late 1960s, most GM compacts and intermediates had abandoned traditional frames. Fact 12. The handling was so bad, one magazine called it the worst in America. A technical article analyzing automotive handling once stated that the early Corvair was probably the worst riding, worst all-around handling car available to the American public, with the exception of the original Pontiac Tempest. The exception. The article implied the Tempest was actually worse than the Corvair, the car Ralph Nader would later attack in Unsafe at Any Speed. In normal driving, the Tempest was fine, but push it hard into a corner, especially on wet pavement, and physics took over. The rear wheels would tuck under as the suspension compressed, suddenly reducing the contact patch. The rear would break loose with little warning. One owner described a gentle 360-degree spin after a routine right turn in the rain. Another reported the Tempest needed constant attention on highways because of the swing axle geometry. The service manual recommended inspecting and adjusting rear toe alignment every 2,000 miles. That's not a typo. Every 2,000 miles. By 1964, the Tempest moved to a new platform with a conventional live rear axle. Handling became predictable, if less exotic. Fact 13. It directly led to the GTO and the muscle car era. This strange, vibrating, oversteer-prone compact was the direct ancestor of the car that launched the muscle car era, the Pontiac GTO. In 1964, the Tempest was redesigned on GM's new A-body platform. It got bigger, heavier, and more conventional. The Trophy 4, rope drive, rear transaxle, and swing axle suspension were all gone. The Tempest was now just another mid-size car, except for one thing. John DeLorean, now chief engineer, had an idea. GM prohibited engines larger than 330 cubic inches in intermediates. But DeLorean realized the rule specified new models, not option packages. So in late 1963, he created an option package for the Tempest Le Mans. They dropped in Pontiac's 389 cubic inch V8, the same engine that spawned the Trophy 4, now in full glory. They added a 4-speed manual, heavy-duty suspension, quick steering, and upgraded brakes. The package was called GTO, Gran Turismo Homologado. It cost about $300. Pontiac expected to sell maybe 5,000 units. They sold over 32,000 in the first year. The GTO became its own model in 1966 and defined an entire era. Think about that progression. The Tempest was born because Pontiac couldn't afford a proper compact engine, so they cut a V8 in half. 3 years later, they put the whole V8 back together in the same platform and created the most influential performance car of the 1960s. The Trophy Ford Tempest lasted just 3 years, but its legacy lived on in the GTO, the Firebird, and every other performance Pontiac that followed. The idea of putting big power in a mid-size body, that idea changed everything. The 1961 Pontiac Tempest was a car that shouldn't have worked. Built on a shoestring budget by a young engineer who would later become famous for very different reasons, it combined desperate cost-cutting with genuine innovation. It vibrated like a paint shaker, handled like it was possessed, and solved problems that nobody asked it to solve. Yet it won Car of the Year. It sold respectably. It introduced Americans to concepts like front-engine, rear transaxle layouts, four-wheel independent suspension, and unibody construction. And most importantly, it kept Pontiac alive long enough to create the GTO and launch the muscle car era. Today, the Tempest is mostly forgotten. When people remember it at all, they remember the GTO that came from it, not the strange compact that made the GTO possible. But for 3 years, from 1961 to 1963, Pontiac sold a car that was genuinely unlike anything else on American roads. Was it a good car? By conventional standards, probably not. The Trophy 4 was too rough, the suspension too twitchy, the whole package too compromised. But was it important? Absolutely. It proved that American manufacturers could think outside the box. It showed that innovation didn't require unlimited budgets. And it demonstrated that sometimes the weirdest solutions are the ones that end up mattering most. The next time you see a Porsche 944 with its front engine and rear transaxle, remember the Tempest got there first and did it for $2,167. The next time you read about the perfect 50-50 weight distribution in a modern sports car, remember the Tempest achieved it by accident in 1961. And the next time you hear a GTO's 389 V8 rumble to life, remember it started as half an engine in a car nobody expected to succeed. That's the legacy of the 1961 Pontiac Tempest. Not the car it was, but the cars it made possible. Now I want to hear from you. Did you or a family member ever own a Tempest? Have you driven one of these strange machines? Share your experiences in the comments below. Whether you loved it or it left you stranded on the side of the road, I want to hear the stories. The Tempest community might be small, but it's dedicated, and every one of these cars has a tale to tell. If you enjoyed this deep dive into automotive history, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss future videos. We're just getting started uncovering the forgotten stories, the engineering failures, and the unexpected successes that shape the cars we drive today. And don't forget to like this video. It helps more car enthusiasts discover these stories. Share it with anyone who appreciates automotive history, especially if they've never heard of the Tempest. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one, where we'll dig into another piece of automotive history they tried to forget. Until then, keep the shiny side up and the greasy side down.